Some secrets remain hidden in whispers for years. Others come knocking at your door, dragging you into a path you can never return from. My story began just like that. I'm Bethany, 45 years old. From the outside, my life looked perfect. I was married to Andres, a strong, successful businessman. We had no financial struggles, lived in a big house, and to everyone else, we seemed like the ideal couple. But no one knew how many nights I spent alone. No one could see the emptiness that had been growing inside me for years until Frank came into the picture. Frank, Andres' father. He lost his wife years ago and had learned to live alone. But what made Frank different wasn't just his solitude. Even at his age, he had a presence, charismatic, intelligent, and effortlessly charming. He was the kind of man who could pull you into his world without you even realizing it. He had been visiting us frequently for years, drawing me into deep conversations that I always looked forward to. But now things had shifted. One day, Frank called Andres and told him he was planning to move to a nearby town. He wanted a quieter life, somewhere close to us. I already visit all the time anyway, so why not be closer? He had said, but I knew the truth. I knew why he was really coming. Had he sensed the same thing I had been trying to ignore for so long? I wasn't sure. Not until that night. The night Andres left me alone once again. Frank arrived in the afternoon. Andres was still nowhere to be seen. Of course, he had said he had work, but I knew better by now. There was a heaviness in my chest, a mix of anger and disappointment. But something felt different today. I didn't want to call Andres and demand answers. I didn't want to confront him, because deep down, I had already given up. Because once certain doors open, they don't close again. And I was standing right at the threshold. When I opened the door, Frank greeted me with his usual warm smile. He had a small bag in his hand, and as he stepped inside, his eyes lingered on me just a little longer than they should have. It was impossible not to notice, but this time it didn't make me uncomfortable. If anything, it settled something inside me, Bethany, he said, his voice carrying that calmness he always had. It's always good to see you, but today you look different. I raised an eyebrow. Different how? He tilted his head slightly. I don't know. More open, maybe? A small flicker of something ran through me. I had known for a long time that Frank noticed things about me that Andres never did. Maybe up until now, I had been the one shutting those moments down. But today I wasn't going to brush it off. Come in, I said. I'll make us some coffee. We walked into the kitchen, and as I moved around, I could feel his eyes on me. Frank was never the type of man to rush into anything. He always took his time, choosing his words carefully. He had a way of filling the silence without making it awkward. I've decided to move to a small town nearby, he said finally. I paused while placing the cups on the counter. Really? He nodded. Yeah, I want a quieter life, but I also want to be close to you guys. I've already looked at a few places. I'm thinking of a small house by the water, peaceful, quiet. I didn't know if his words were putting me at ease or creating a whole new kind of tension inside me. But before I realized it, I found myself getting lost in the conversation. It'd be nice having you close by, I said, without even thinking. Frank gave a small smile, lifting his eyes from his cup and looking right at me. Yeah, and when Andre's busy with work, you can always come over to clear your head. You know, living alone can be harder than people expect sometimes. There was something in his voice, something unspoken yet impossible to miss. Slowly, I lifted my head and met his gaze. For years, I had ignored something in our conversations, in the way he talked to me, the way he looked at me. But today, I wasn't ignoring it. Frank's interest in me had always been there. But today, I was finally looking at him the same way. The only question running through my mind was, after everything Andres had done to me, was I still trying to be loyal? Or was it just habit at this point? Frank took another sip of his coffee, never breaking eye contact. I mean it, Bethany. I've always enjoyed talking to you. And in this new life I'm starting, I really like to have you in it. His words echoed in my head. If this were any other time, I probably would have laughed it off or changed the subject, but not today. Today, I was part of the game too. Before this story gets any more intense, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to stay updated. And if you leave a super like or a comment, I really appreciate it. Seeing Frank's excitement about his new life surprised me, but at the same time, it intrigued me. As he talked about his plans, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. A real conversation, a real connection. So, when are you moving? I asked, genuinely curious. Frank smirked slightly, took another sip of his coffee, and turned to me. Actually, I already bought the house, he said, locking eyes with me. Didn't tell Andres yet. He'd probably just ask, why didn't you run it by me first? I raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. Seriously, you didn't mention it to him at all? Frank shook his head, pulling his phone out of his pocket and unlocking the screen. Nope, didn't really feel the need to. This is my decision. I just came to see the place one more time and sign the paperwork. It's only about 30 minutes from here by car. When he held the phone out toward me, I instinctively leaned in to take a look. As I scrolled through the pictures, an unexpected feeling crept into my chest. A wide porch, big windows. The kind of house where you could feel the ocean breeze from every corner. It was beautiful. This place is amazing, I murmured, staring at the screen, taking in every detail. Frank shifted slightly closer, and our shoulders brushed together. I hesitated, my fingers still on his phone, frozen in place. That small touch between us, it felt like it lasted forever. I'm glad you think so, he said, his voice low and steady. I lifted my head slightly and looked at him. There was a different kind of warmth in his eyes, the kind I hadn't felt in years, like the shiver that runs through your body when a warm hand brushes against your skin. My heart pounded, but I didn't pull away. Hours passed. Conversations, laughter, shared memories. But the pull between us wasn't just about words. We both knew it. As the night stretched on, I finally retreated to my room. Andrew still hadn't come home. I didn't check my phone. I didn't even want to think about where he was. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I took a deep breath. There was a restlessness inside me, yet at the same time I felt strangely at ease. Just as I was about to lie down, I heard a soft knock on the door. I froze. It was late. No one should be knocking on my door at this hour. But something inside me already knew who it was. Frank. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I stared at the door. A hesitation crept in. The thin satin nightgown I was wearing clung to every curve, barely concealing anything. I always slept like this. I liked feeling comfortable, but now it felt different. Should I not open the door? Looking like this, I'd be impossible for Frank to ignore. But the moment I thought about Andres, about his betrayal, the anger inside me shifted my decision. He was in another woman's bed while I was supposed to be alone in mine. Number and Frank. He hadn't come here by accident. I'd felt his interest in me for a long time. But today was different. Because of Andres, because of everything he'd done, I wasn't going to spend another night lying awake in an empty bed. I took a deep breath, ran my fingers through my hair, adjusted the strap of my nightgown, and walked toward the door. My hand hovered over the knob for a moment. Deep down, I knew I was about to cross a line, but that was the thing. I no longer cared about lines. I opened the door. Frank's eyes locked onto me instantly, and the way he looked at me, it sent a strange sense of satisfaction through me. His gaze flickered from my face downward, lingering on the low-cut neckline, the curve of my waist, the way the satin barely covered my thighs. For a second, I swear he forgot to breathe, but Frank was always a man who kept himself in check. "You can come in," I said, opening the door a little wider. My voice was softer than I'd expected. He hesitated for just a moment before stepping inside. I closed the door behind him and walked back to the bed, sinking onto the mattress with an easy, relaxed movement. And then I asked the question that had been sitting on my tongue. "Where's Andres?" Frank blinked, caught off guard. "Still isn't back." His gaze was still on me, but I could tell he was trying to focus on the conversation. "No," I said, tilting my head slightly. "I'm used to it by now. He does this all the time. He leaves me alone." I let my eyes find his wanting to hold them there. "But tell me, Frank." I paused, giving him just enough time to feel the weight of my next words. "Do you think I'm the kind of woman who should be left alone?" At that moment, silence filled the room. I wanted to see the expression on Frank's face. He was always controlled, rational, and distant. But in that silence, I could see the storm raging inside him. The strap of my nightgown slipped slightly off my shoulder. I could have fixed it, acted normal, but I didn't instead. I casually adjusted the bedsheet with one hand, shifting my legs in a slow, deliberate motion. The movement was natural, effortless, but the effect was undeniable. Frank swallowed hard. I could see he had no idea what to say. But his eyes said everything. For a second, he just stared, caught between shock and something else, something he was desperately trying to suppress. "No, Bethany, you're beautiful. You're stunning. You know that," he said, glancing away as if looking at me any longer would break him. "But Andre's not being here. That worries me. Do you know what's going on?" I locked eyes with him. So controlled, so composed. But I wasn't holding back anymore. Not today. I took a deep breath and let the words spill out all at once. "He's cheating on me, Frank. I've known for a long time." The words landed between us like an explosion. Frank just stared, his eyes widening, not even breathing for a moment. "Bethany, how could he do that?" he asked in a low voice, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. It was the right reaction, the normal reaction. But I wasn't normal anymore. I stood up, letting the satin fabric of my nightgown slide over my skin as I loosened the strap. I kept my gaze locked on Frank as I whispered, "I don't care, Frank." His face froze, caught between shock and something else entirely. "Bethany," he breathed, but his voice was unsteady. The composed, rational man he had always been was crumbling right in front of me. I took a step toward him, close enough that he could feel my breath on his skin. "Isn't this what you wanted all along?" I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. "Isn't this why you kept coming here so often? Isn't this why you're moving to a town so close?" Frank swallowed hard. Even a man like him, so disciplined, so in control, couldn't hold back at this moment. He hesitated for a second, fighting something within himself. But then, he closed the distance between us in an instant, crashing his lips against mine, silencing me with the kind of kiss that carried years of suppressed desire. His hands gripped my waist, pulling me into him, his touch burning against my skin. It wasn't gentle. It was raw, desperate, inevitable. And in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. When Frank finally pulled away, he was breathless. His eyes searched mine, filled with hesitation but burning with something much deeper. He was trying to remind himself how far he shouldn't go, but we had already crossed that line. "Bethany," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "What if Andres comes home? What if he walks in right now?" I met his gaze, my lips curving into a slow, knowing smile. Without a word, I walked to the bed and let myself sink into it, my body relaxing against the soft pillows. I reached up, running my fingers through my hair, tilting my head as I watched him. I locked the front door, I said, my voice smooth, unwavering. Left the key in the lock. I held his gaze, my smile deepening. He couldn't get in even if he tried, Frank. My words hung in the air, but my body, my every movement was inviting him closer. Frank hesitated for just a few more seconds, like he was fighting some final resistance, but then I saw it. The hesitation in his eyes disappeared, replaced by something far more certain. Slowly, he started walking toward the bed, his gaze never leaving mine. "How did you know I wanted you this much?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. I shifted slightly, letting my fingers graze over the sheets, my body responding to his closeness. My eyes met his, silently urging him to come closer. "Because I always felt it," I murmured. "And so did you." Frank reached the edge of the bed, planting his hands on either side of me, leaning in ever so slowly. The moment I felt his breath on my skin, I knew nothing would ever be the same after this. And as he shed the last of his clothes, neither of us cared. My words lingered in the air, but with every movement, my body was inviting him closer. Frank hesitated for a few more seconds, as if he was making one last attempt to resist. But then the doubt in his eyes faded, replaced by something far more certain. Slowly, he started walking toward the bed, his gaze locked onto me, never wavering. "How did you know I wanted you this much?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I shifted slightly, my fingers grazing over the sheets, my body responding instinctively. My eyes met his, silently telling him to come closer. "Because I always felt it," I murmured. "And so did you." Frank reached the edge of the bed, placing his hands down, leaning over me, inch by inch. The moment I felt his breath that close to my skin, I knew nothing would ever be the same after this. And as he shed the last of his clothes, neither of us cared. When Frank got even closer, I realized even more how attractive he was. His body was muscular and large. This affected me, and at the same time, it made me wonder how someone his age could look so young. I felt that Frank no longer hesitated. When I thought about the cheating incident I had experienced and how close I was with Frank now, I got very excited. And everything had now taken a different turn. At that very moment, I felt something big inside me. Something bigger than I had ever felt before. "This is so beautiful," I reacted. "Frank, believe me, it's the same for me. You are a very beautiful woman, and I always knew that Andres never deserved you," he said. At that moment, I closed my eyes and surrendered myself to the moment. My hands were gripping the sheets so tightly that I can't even describe it. My hands occasionally roamed over Andres' shoulders and back. My nails had unintentionally left scratches, and the more I saw them, the more excited I became. Frank was breathless. So was I. As my body trembled, I lifted my head up towards the ceiling and closed my eyes. "I've never been this excited before," I said. "There's more than this, Bethany," Frank said. I immediately responded, "That house." "Frank, I will come to the house you're going to rent very often." "Don't worry," I said. Frank seemed to like that and looked at me with admiration. I turned my head to the right and watched us through the big mirror on the wardrobe. At that moment, Frank completely let himself go. That night, Andres didn't come home again, and me. I was in Frank's arms, feeling a passion I never saw coming. One more time. Somewhere deep inside, I knew I was supposed to feel guilty. But all I really felt was how real every touch had been, and the fact that I would never forget these moments. When I opened my eyes in the morning, Frank wasn't there. The silence hit me in a weird way, like an ache I wasn't expecting. I got out of bed and walked to the kitchen, and that's when I saw it. A piece of paper sitting on the counter. There was nothing on it but an address. Something inside me stirred. My heart started pounding, and I couldn't stop it. Frank hadn't said a word. He had just left. But I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I could feel it. By noon, Andres finally came home. He looked around like he couldn't care less and asked, "Where's Frank?" I locked eyes with him, keeping my voice cold and steady. "He left when you didn't show up." I stared at his blank face. He didn't care, and that's what hurt the most. A few years ago, when I first realized this, something inside me had broken. But now, it didn't matter at all. The first day Andres was gone again, I didn't waste a second. I grabbed that piece of paper with Frank's address, threw on the sexiest thing I could find in my closet, and walked out the door. And let me tell you, I cannot wait to spill all the details about that night, about what happened with Frank in that big glass-walled bedroom overlooking the ocean. This story isn't over, it's just getting started. Don't forget to hit that subscribe to my channel, and drop a comment for more. Turning on notifications means you'll get these kinds of stories even faster. I promise.